You're a travelling merchant. Your journey to the next town by foot has been long and gruelling. As part of your route, you pass through a forest. It's turned dark. You keep focused on your goal, imagining the town ahead, a warm inn and a nice tankard of ale. There are lots of reasons you don't want to be out here at night. Bandits, yes, but something else, something more primal. Then you hear the sound you've been dreading. An eerie, plaintive noise drifting through dense, dark trees. A howl. That means they're on the move. Quick, powerful, pristine predators are hunting in the forest tonight. You pull your hood up and your steps get quicker, your palms sweating, desperate to reach civilization, to get out of the dark woods before these beasts catch your scent. Because out here, in the wild, alone, you're not fancying your chances of coming up against hungry, wild wolves. If you make it, you think you're going to tell this village they need to hire a wolf hunter, one of those strange people who make their living finding and hunting down these creatures, the kind of person who'll see it through to the bloody end. Hello and welcome to Beastly History. I'm Michelle Douglas, wildlife producer and natural history superfan. In every episode, we're investigating a thrilling tale of people and the wild. And today we're travelling back to 17th century Ireland to delve into the story of one of the most prolific professional wolf hunters. Yes, that's right, wolf hunters, called Rory Carragh, and the case that made him famous. Now, if you're anything like me, wolves will both captivate and terrify you, and I find it thrilling to think that they once roamed the forests in Britain and Ireland freely. So we're going to be digging into the cultural history of wolves in Ireland with the help of expert guest Dr Kieran Hickey. So welcome to this episode, Ireland's Wolf Hunters. Rory Carragh has an unusual job. His role has certain perks. He gets to do lots of travelling, which appeals to a sense of adventure. It can also be pretty lucrative on good days. But there are big risks attached to the role. Carragh's a professional wolf hunter. Wolf hunting's a tough way to make a living. But it's the 1690s and 17th century life's tough anyway. Carragh's a very good wolf hunter, and he's started to make a name for himself. But right now, he's on his way to his biggest challenge yet, because he's answering a call to help a small village in the mountains of County Tyrone. The farming community's having problems with two large wolves who keep taking their livestock at night, and the villagers are getting desperate. This male and female are said to be among the last wolves in the region. As Carragh approaches the village, he's thinking up a plan to catch and kill these creatures. Carragh knows if he succeeds, he can rid the community of these beasts, collect a handsome bounty, and seal his reputation as a legendary wolf hunter. But if he fails, he knows he could pay with his life. Once upon a time in Ireland, like lots of countries across Europe, wolves roamed freely. But over the centuries, these magnificent animals were wiped out. In Britain, wolves likely disappear from England and Wales in the 13th and 14th centuries. They vanish from Scotland in the 17th century. But wolves in Ireland hold on longer. It's not until around the turn of the 19th century they're finally extinguished here too. To help us investigate the fascinating tale of Ireland's wolves and wolf hunters, we're joined by Dr Kieran Hickey, Senior Lecturer at University College Cork and author of books including Wolves in Ireland. Hello there, Kieran. Lovely to meet you.
Hello, Michelle. How are you?
Now, I don't know if you've ever looked a wolf in the eye, but when I've seen them at Bristol Zoo Project, honestly, I've been mesmerised by their size, elegance and general badass aura. So I start by asking Kieran what's special about these incredible beasts. I think it's worth taking a moment to imagine what a wolf is like if you haven't seen one before, because they're not like dogs.
Yes, for first thing to say is, of course, everybody thinks the wolf is like an Alsatian or a husky, etc. But that's the Hollywood version. The reality is wolves, particularly large male alpha wolves, would be the size of a pony. They would be huge animals, 55, 60, 70 kilos, even more, 2 meters long. Incredibly large paws that would cover a normal adult's face. A head that was so big that, for the bigger wolves, you could actually put your head into their jaws, which is something I wouldn't obviously recommend on any way, shape or form. So they were big, powerful predators.
In Ireland, over the centuries, as we'll hear, historical events set the conditions for a new type of job, wolf hunters like Rory Carragh. Going way back in Ireland's history, long before Rory Carragh's time, wolves were commonplace. There's loads of references to the animals in medieval literature, for example. So back when forests and wolves were widespread, how did people and predator get along living side by side? Can you talk us through a few of the accounts that you've read of people living near wolves and what that relationship was like?
One of the fascinating things when I started to look in detail at the historical records was just how normal it seemed for people to be dealing with wolves. I came across in the book, there's lots of letters of people describing, problems with wolves in the area, attacking sheep and being heard at night time, but not in anything like as if they were a rare alien creature, but it was like something they were very familiar with. Wolf attacks particularly on sheep was very problematic in many parts of Ireland because, of course, sheep were a very important part of the rural economy. And surprisingly as well, one that really got me was that wolves were also close to city centres, which would be the old medieval city centre. So, for example, Kilmainham in Dublin, which is now city centre Dublin, which is absolutely astonishing to me because you would never even remotely imagine that far into the modern city there were actually wild spaces with wolves around them. The main threats for wolves really is livestock. I mean, you've got a pack of wolves or an individual. It was easy for wolves to target farm animals. There are a few references, though, to wolf attacks on humans in Ireland, which is quite interesting. And that kind of shocked me when I came across them. But there are very particular contexts. After the famous Battle of Kinsale in 1601, injured soldiers reported as being attacked by wolves. There's also reference after famines in Ireland and after warfare in Ireland, particularly the Cromwellian and Williamite wars in Ireland, of wolves taking abandoned children as well, because obviously they would be seen as easy prey for wolves and would fall into the standard wolf pattern of behaviour. So although they're very rare today in Western countries and in North America, they are still occasionally occur in places like Siberia and northern China and Mongolia. So they don't exclusively not attack humans. They still see humans potentially as a food resource. And the only other creature that would routinely do that would be, of course, the polar bear.
So although it's rare, wolves do attack humans. But the main source of human-wolf conflict is when they take livestock, which threatens farmers' livelihoods. Despite this, for centuries it seems people and wolves coexisted relatively peacefully in Ireland. There's fear and respect for the animals, evidenced in stories and legends of the time. But for lots of people, sharing land with predatory wild beasts was just part and parcel of life.
The old Irish traditions was that they were tolerated. The locals had a very different attitude, keep the numbers in control, but nevertheless no attempt to exterminate them in any way, shape or form.
There was even the odd person who took the wolf thing to the extreme.
They were also, by the way, kept as pets by some Irish lords as well.
As you'd imagine, wolves are ingrained in Irish folklore. Kieran's curated lots of these stories which tell us of the animal's cultural significance. There are the traditions like hanging a wolf tail on your door would keep other wolves away, or the story that sleeping with a wolf's head under your pillow will ward away nightmares. Supernatural werewolf stories have a strong history in Ireland too. One of the most famous legends is the werewolves of Ossory, about a man and a woman who transformed into wolves every 7 years. Human and wolf coexisted for centuries before events that would change the course of Ireland's history and the fate of wolves with it.
One of the big challenges, and obviously in Irish history, is the conflict with England, with the Normans, etc. And obviously Cromwell, when he took over, really decided that Ireland needed pacification. And the best way to pacify it was to bring in his own people and put them at the top. And in particular, he targeted Munster and Ulster, but also parts of Leinster as well. So the idea was that his soldiers, and in particular his officers, would be given large grants of land in Ireland, irrespective of whether there were Irish on those lands at the time. But many of the people who came in after the original Cromwellian wars were finished were really, to be honest, sold a con, because what they were told, particularly in southern Scotland and in northern England, where most of them came from, was, number one, that the natives were friendly. We weren't. Okay, there was very few wolves. There was actually loads of wolves. In fact, some of the writers back from this time describe Ireland as wolfland. Okay, and that the land was cleared of forests, which it wasn't in many places as well. So they were really sold a kind of a brochure to come across, and everything would be wonderful, and to get these enormous tracts of land, it would be fantastic. In reality, it was so bad that almost the whole plantation of Munster nearly failed, and many of them returned from Munster in particular, but not from Ulster. So one of the things they set about doing was to change Ireland to make it more of what they were used to. I call this the shirification of Ireland, or at least attempted shirification of Ireland. So they target deforestation. So, for example, in 1600, Ireland to 12.5% native oak forest. By 1700, it was 2.5%.
Oliver Cromwell's brutal and bloody campaign in Ireland included devastating destruction of the landscape, and the authorities introduced a new systematic killing of wolves. So as all of a sudden the English authorities became very concerned with systematically hunting wolves, what was the context for that to happen?
As part of that story, as well as the deforestation, they set bounties. And one of the big things that come in is that they set bounties. And it's quite interesting now when you look at the bounties. So it was typically £10 for a Catholic priest, and £10 in the 1600s was a huge amount of money. £10 for a Tory, which is very interesting today when you think about the Tory party in the UK, because obviously these were Confederates, these were anti-royalist. Then £6 for a female wolf, £5 for a male wolf, £3 for a juvenile, and 10 shillings for a cub. So the female wolf was more valued than the male wolf, which is mostly never happens in historical stuff. But here in the context of wolf populations, it absolutely did. The Cromwellians set about de-wolfing Ireland, de-priesting Ireland and de-Torying Ireland, which they did with some success. Most successful was the wolf, unfortunately.
English authorities have now put a bounty on the heads of Ireland's emblematic apex predator. One result of the act is that the bounties attract a new kind of person, wolf hunters. At this point, I guess you have these professional wolf hunters driven by these bounties.
Yes, and this is very interesting because, firstly, you've got to think of the fact that wolves were effectively gone from England, Scotland, Wales by 1500, despite later claims for Scotland, which don't stand up to historical scrutiny. Some of these individuals came in from that territory. So the question I would always ask was, where did they get their wolf hunting experience? There's a passing reference to a few from the continent, which probably would have had more wolf hunting experience. There's also reference to local Irish wolf hunters as well. And here it gets tricky because obviously one of the things the Cromwellian government and afterwards didn't want was large numbers of armed Irish roaming around the countryside, pretending as such to be hunting wolves. So they were concerned that we were arming up for something entirely different, which of course happened on frequent occasions.
Rory Carragh is probably Ireland's most famous wolf hunter. He has a fierce reputation. By all accounts, Carragh's an enigmatic, hardcore, outdoorsy kind of chap, a real risk taker and, pardon the pun, a lone wolf.
Yes, Rory Carragh is an interesting character. Given the name, I would suspect that he was Irish. Definitely from the northwest County Donegal. He seems to have established a reputation as a wolf hunter quite quickly across northwestern Ireland and was a bit of a folk hero as a result because of his ability to hunt down and track and hunt down wolves.
It's time to return to the 1690s to continue Carragh's story. The story of his most famous case seems to have been passed down through local families in County Tyrone before being written up in our main source, the Irish Penny Journal, sometime after his death, probably with a few embellishments to the tale. Carragh's on his way to help rid a village of 2 wolves which have been taking their livestock and causing panic in the community. He's accompanied by his wolfhounds for the bloody and dangerous job of killing the wolves. As he gets ready for the task ahead, Carragh's all too aware of the high stakes. How, if he succeeds, he'll be collecting that handsome reward and cementing his status as the best wolf hunter around, and how, if he fails, his hounds could be killed, or he could even face a grisly death himself. Carragh arrives in the village with his dogs and assesses the situation. So what would be the challenges someone like Rory Carragh would have to contend with to do his job?
It would have been quite dangerous, and certainly the requirements for things like wolf hunting dogs and for horses and for equipment would have been quite considerable as well. And given the nature of the northwestern landscape in Ireland, with lots of mountains and lochs and isolated valleys, it would have been a very difficult physical activity to carry out as well.
Carragh's met by the farmers whose sheep are being attacked by the wolves. They explain that the predators come down from the hills at night and enter the livestock field from 2 gaps in the wall at opposing ends. Carragh formulates a plan and quickly realises he's going to need help to trap these wolves. He has with him 2 dogs, but he's going to need another person for this challenging quest. Carragh asks around for a volunteer to help him with his dangerous task. Help comes in a surprising form. The volunteer who steps forward is a brave 12-year-old boy. Night falls. Rory Carragh, the boy and their trusty dogs set out to hunt down these 2 wolves that have been stalking the community. As midnight approaches, that being deemed the best time to hunt wolves, Carragh says to the boy, "Now, as the 2 wolves usually enter the opposite extremities of the sheepfold at the same time, I must leave you and one of the dogs to guard this one while I go to the other." He steals with all the caution of a cat, nor will you hear him, but the dog will. Carragh then tells his plucky 12-year-old his dog will first knock down the wolf and then he must stab it through the neck and kill it. Carragh ends with a sign-off any 12-year-old would love to be left with by his responsible adult companion. If the boy doesn't immediately kill the wolf, Carragh warns him, he will rise up and kill both you and the dog. So, good night. The boy takes a spear from Carragh and promises to see through his dangerous task. The night draws on. It's very late, dark and cold, and the boy and the dog, waiting by the gap in the wall they expect the wolf to come through, are falling into an uncomfortable sleep. When suddenly the boy is woken by the growl and sudden leap of his dog at his side. The wolf has come into the field, and the dog has pinned him to the ground. The boy springs into action, grabs his spear and rams it through the neck of the struggling wolf, killing him cold. Rory Carragh hurries to the scene and appears beside the boy. Carragh has been across the mountainside to hunt the second wolf, and the breathless little boy now sees Carragh is carrying the other wolf's head as grisly proof of its death. Both wolves are dead. This story seems to be the last account of wolves killed in County Tyrone. Carragh is one of the best-known hunters of the time, but he was one of many professional as well as amateur wolf hunters operating to collect the bounties put on wolves' heads. Wolf hunting, persecution and other changes like habitat destruction means that by the time we reach the 18th century, wolf numbers appear to be dwindling. When people start to realise they're losing this wild beast altogether, the attitude towards them seems to change.
Interestingly, throughout the 1700s, there were claims in newspapers and in all sorts of other documents about the last wolf in the mountain area, in a district, in a county, etc. So they went from being perceived as vermin and troublesome to suddenly being almost quite famous in the sense that it was an interesting kind of slight change in attitude as they became rarer and rarer and rarer.
So they were romanticised as people realised actually they were becoming locally extinct.
Yeah, I think so. That's a very good word to describe. They were romanticised. When they were no longer a threat, they became romanticised, and they became suddenly a kind of a focus of attention in a very different way.
The last written record of a wolf in Ireland is found in the history books near the end of the 18th century. Let's fast forward from the 1600s to the 1700s, and we get this final report of human-wolf conflict. Can you tell us about that?
What we have is that story, The Last Wolf, is from Ballydarton, which is an estate on the Carlow Wexford boundary. It's very close to Mount Leinster, and we have the story of this captain heading up into the mountains and finding and killing the last wolf with his pack of wolfhounds and his horses as well. And the record there it goes back to 1786. It's the last, from my perspective, and I followed up on many later claims for wolves in Ireland, none of which have stood up to historical scrutiny. It is the last one that's likely, although it's not perfect by any means. And obviously when you're looking at historical records, you never have quite enough information. But I have no doubt that the last wolves in Ireland were in the 1770s and were probably isolated in a few mountain areas across the country. And as we know, with extinction or extermination on a landmass, once the populations get isolated, their numbers tend to diminish anyway, and with targeted hunting, they would have been down to a few individuals, and eventually one or two individuals scattered around the country, and then they're gone. So my own view is that 1770 is definitely the last human-wolf conflicts in Ireland. I think there was probably wolves around for maybe another 8 or 10 years, but certainly I very sincerely doubt that there were any around after 1800. That effectively represented the end of the wolf in Ireland.
Wolves are now extinct in Ireland. So what happens when you take out a top predator as effective as wolves in an ecosystem? Let's talk about the ecosystem just quickly. What's the biggest predator in Ireland now, and what effect has losing wolves had?
Ireland is very interesting, and again I would upset my zoological friends saying we've a very impoverished fauna, because many of the species that made it to Britain at the end of the last ice age never made it across the Irish Sea. Hence we have no snakes, we have no weasels, we have no moles, so quite a limited fauna. We did have, though, definitely, we had lynx, we had bear, we had wild cat, we had wolf, and all those are gone. So the biggest wild predator we have at the moment is the red fox, of course, vulpes.
Does it mean that there are some other species that maybe aren't controlled in the way that they would have been with a wolf? Do you think it's caused problems?
Yes, I think like many parts of Scotland and in some mountain areas in England and Wales, well, we have a major deer problem in Ireland because there are no natural predators of deer, and we have a very much a fast rising deer population in many parts of Ireland.
It seems quite far off when we discuss the possibility of reintroductions of wolves. It's a controversial topic, and it does seem quite far off.
Ireland would be really challenging to reintroduce a wolf in many respects. Firstly, we still have a very large rural population. And unlike, say, in Scotland, where you've got these very incredibly large estates with very few people, that's not the case in Ireland. We have literally people on every acre of Ireland with very, very few exceptions. So, and our national parks are relatively small in comparison to what would be required by a wolf pack. So the challenge really for Ireland would be that the landscape really isn't wild enough. There is certainly a lot of interest in reintroducing the wolf into Ireland. There's been parliamentary debates about it. There's been discussions online, etc. But it would represent a significant challenge. Probably not in my lifetime, but I would be optimistic that somewhere down the line for Ireland we would have wolves back. They were a hugely important part of the Irish natural history and cultural history up to the 1700s and even beyond that. And to have lost that so close to the modern day when attitudes have changed dramatically is quite sad, really. And to think that my ancestors, because I have a very old Irish surname, would have had... might never have seen wolves, because I think they would still been very careful around humans, but certainly would have heard them howling at night time, certainly in the mountainous areas, in the forest areas and on their fringes. And they are an incredible creature.
The grey wolf still exists across the northern hemisphere in Europe, Asia, and North America. There are also subspecies of wolves found in different habitats, including the Arctic wolf, the Arabian wolf, and the Mexican wolf. And there's another relative of the wolf you might be more familiar with.
And of course, the domestic dog is Latin name is Canis lupus familiaris, so direct descendant of the grey wolf is the domestic dog. So anybody who has a dog as a pet actually really has a wolf in their house in disguise.
A huge thanks to Dr Kieran Hickey, geography, natural history and wolves and island expert, for taking the time to talk to us. Now it's time for top takeaways. It's no wonder wolves have made quite such an impact on cultural history as they have. You've got stories like Little Red Riding Hood, sayings like a wolf in sheep's clothing, the wolves at the door, but they're always used as a scary emblem of the wild. But it's fascinating how we heard that although they command fear through cultures, there's also a lot of respect there for wolves as well. It's a really fascinating relationship between human and wolf. But I think my main takeaway is just thinking about how almost mythically amazing the actual animal, the wolf, is. I mean, it's just no wonder they've made such a huge impact on cultures all around the world. They are truly the emblem of what it means to be powerful and wild. Personally, I don't know about you. Maybe you live in a country where there are still wolves, so this feels very real to you. I'd love to hear if that's the case, but I do find it fun when I'm walking through a forest where I live in England and it's getting dark, to imagine yourself back to centuries ago when wolf packs roamed and a plaintive howl could travel for miles across the land. So we still have forests where you can feel the thrill of ghosts of our wilder past and appreciate those beasts that we share spaces with now. Do check out Dr Kieran Hickey's book Ireland's Last Wolves, which was an essential source for this story, and I've included links to resources in the episode show notes if you want to geek out about wolves and wolf hunters. Beastly History is written and produced by me, Michelle Douglas. It's an independent production made by Wild Beast Studios. If you love natural history stories and you enjoyed this, please do leave me a rating or review. I'd love to hear from you. And check out my Instagram account at Beastly History 2. Until next time, keep being beastly.